Nervous system regulation, the key to conquering chronic stress and hormonal imbalances. I think there are so many people out there that know that they're stressed, they know that it's not good, but what do you do about it? And then we also know that that chronic stress is what creates these hormonal imbalances that people are having. It causes all sorts of dysregulation going on. And a simple way to kind of look at it is if the body is having to take all of these resources to manage that stress response all of the time, if it's trying to dampen that stress response all of the time, taking all of the resources, nutrition, energy that we have, and allocating it towards that, it cannot, there aren't enough resources oftentimes, if there's a lot of chronic stress going on, in order to manufacture hormones, keep them balanced, and do a lot of other functions that the body really needs to stay in balance. Beyond deep breathing or meditation, which actually can be really difficult for people that are in a chronic stressed state, what do? I think if you really understand what nervous system regulation is, which I feel like is a huge piece of the puzzle that's often being missed in this functional medicine space that we're in. The focus oftentimes is supplements to maybe adaptogens or adrenal supplements. And even though those may not necessarily be bad, they're not really addressing the upstream root cause reason that the stress response is chronic and the body is dealing with this chronic stress response. Now, here's the thing. We all know that life is stressful. I wish I could tell you that that's going to stop, but it doesn't. We need to provide tools to build resilience and have a strategy for that. And that's what nervous system regulation does. So let's talk a little bit about the amygdala, the part of the brain that senses threat. So when somebody has been in a chronic stressed state for a long time, the amygdala is hyper aware. It's hyper vigilant in sensing a threat. So things that typically would not be a threat, whether external or internal, a healthy stress response would be, you see a snake on the sidewalk, you move away, the stress response dampens after you're away from the snake. But what happens in a chronic stress state is that amygdala is always sensing a snake around. And so that's really, really hard on the body. It requires an enormous amount of resources for the body to calm that response all of the time. When that's happening all of the time with the amygdala, it creates something called limbic system impairment. So it's a part of the brain, the limbic system, and we work a lot within nervous system regulation, limbic system rewiring. So it's basically taking that message from the amygdala to the part of the brain called the limbic system. It's sensing that as a threat, and the brain basically gets stuck in overdrive with that stress response all the time. Now, here's the amazing thing about how our bodies and brains work is we can shift that. It takes effort, it does, and that's what we work with people in our program, and with a process to help them retrain the brain to get the body kind of out of that stuck state in that stress response all of the time. But some really simple things that you can do. I'm telling you, I always feel like if people dedicated some time outside for walking without being distracted on a daily basis, that really has a profound impact on the nervous system and calming things down a little bit. Sounds so simple. Sounds like that would not be effective, but most people that are in that chronic stressed state don't realize that how the brain works, it actually is kind of a dysfunctional pattern that happens where there's actually a dopamine response that the brain gets from being stressed. It's part of trying to be in control and trying to be proactive about what's happening next. It gets a dopamine hit. So oftentimes, someone may know that going outside for a walk and calming the nervous system in theory is good, but getting them to actually do that because they're habituated to this stress response that they actually, believe it or not, the body is actually wanting to stimulate more of that same response so it gets that dopamine hit. It's kind of a crazy cycle that happens that we have to undo. But it's so critical to switch that off or change that to get the body out of that chronic stressed state so that it has the capacity to manufacture and balance some of those hormones. What I see oftentimes is people looking for other solutions, whether it's HRT, hormone replacement therapy, or even natural things to support hormones. But here's the thing, if we don't figure out why that's happening it actually can create other problems. So HRT, for instance, hormone replacement therapy, when people are taking some of these hormones, even if they're bioidentical, it signals the brain to stop producing hormones, those hormones altogether. And that's problematic. The other thing that I see happen, that actually happened to me too, is you can be taking some of these hormones, and when there is this chronic stress state that the body is in, there's something that happens to the hormone receptors. When hormones are produced in the body, there's a hormone receptor that actually helps the hormone function the way that it's supposed to. And when that's not functioning properly, you have a situation where it can do all kinds of really crazy things that aren't helpful and actually can be really, really harmful for the body too. One of the things that happened to me was I had a lot of weight gain, even despite working out really well and eating super, super, super clean, managed to gain quite a bit of weight because the hormone receptors were not working properly. So it didn't matter how much additional hormone I was taking. We could look at lab work and see that those hormones were low, but increasing the hormones didn't make me feel that much better. And all of these other side effects were happening. So I knew that that was not the solution either. And I'm here to tell you it really isn't. What we're seeing now a lot of times is that these hormones that people are taking are really creating a lot of other issues, whether it's immediately or down the road. And I think there are a lot of risks to taking some of these things that you really have to consider long term for sure. In these situations, there are lots and lots of different solutions for this. So I want to give you hope. I don't want you to feel like, okay, I'm taking hormones that made me feel better. Now you're trying to take them away from me. That's not the case. There are things that you can work with that are very, very supportive to help in that process and during that period of time. So let's just talk about some of the strategies with nervous system regulation that we can share. So one of them is getting regular, consistent walks outside, even if it's 15 minutes. There's something really magical that happens with creator and design. We were designed to work a certain way. Getting some of that sunlight exposure can be really, really helpful. Just listening to the sounds in nature. So I would encourage you to get out there and not even be listening to podcasts or anything else. Just listening to some of those sounds in nature and getting outside to walk can be immensely helpful. So that's one thing that you can work with. There are some really easy breathing exercises that you can work with as well. Just inhaling through the nose for the count of 4, exhaling out of the mouth for the count of 8. Doing that several times a day can really, really be helpful and start to calm the nervous system down as well. There are just a number of different strategies to work with. We can't go into everything today, but I just want to give you hope that there are ways to address some of these things that are beyond just some of the typical things that people have done to manage stress, because we don't want to be dependent on medications necessarily, or maybe things that involve a risk and potential long-term consequences or challenges, when if we address the upstream root cause, we can really fix the problem. And hey, let's just face it, who wants to be stressed out all the time anyhow? There's just ways to go about dealing with some of these things that can be really, really, really super, super helpful. And sometimes people will look at supplements too. There are some supplements that can kind of help dampen the stress response. But once again, if we're not looking upstream to the thought patterns. We didn't talk about neuroplasticity, but that's another huge piece of the puzzle. You may have heard that term before, but the brain is very plastic, meaning it can change. When we're in this chronic stressed state, there's something in the limbic system rewiring world called owls or old wired loops. They get ingrained in the brain, and we kind of get to these repetitive pattern processes of chronic stress all of the time. So it's a matter of shifting those, because when we're in that chronic stress state, all of that inflammation is happening, and the brain does not know the difference between that actually happening or not. So just thinking about these things can be profoundly impactful. If we can get you to stop thinking about some of these things that are always such big chronic stressors and train the brain to move to a happier place. We use a lot of visualization techniques with this too. So just even thinking about past things that you have, past experiences that have brought you a lot of joy, or things in the future that bring you a lot of joy. This also, because of that neuroplasticity that I mentioned, can have the same impact from the standpoint that the brain doesn't know the difference between actually happening or not. And the body starts to release all of these healing anti-inflammatory chemicals, which is huge. That takes the burden off of the body, so the body has the capacity then to heal and start producing and regulating and balancing those hormones. I just want to share with you, there are other ways to go about addressing hormones and chronic stress that don't always involve medications or injections. I am a big fan of these other ways to do this, because I've been there. I've done all of the medications. I've done all of the stuff that it really did not fix the problem. I would say maybe for some people, and I was one of them, you may get some temporary symptom relief, but then over time you realize it's actually creating a whole bunch of other problems that you don't want to have. Let's work on that nervous system regulation piece. If you're interested in what is involved with that, please feel free to reach out. It's not very well known in the functional medicine world just yet. I think as time goes on and people are becoming more and more stressed, or realizing that they're more and more stressed, and that is having so much to do, it's such a critical piece of their health challenges, it really needs to be addressed. So if that's you and you're interested in that, please feel free to reach out. Always happy to answer questions and help. Hope that was some helpful information for you. Health and happiness. Have a super fantastic day. Thanks so much.